working. And Doug, can you still hear me?
Yes, your audio is great.
And we're all good. Awesome. So, welcome to Stevens Institute of Technology. Your brother just gave a rousing intro speech. How you're his favorite baby brother. We've got someone give me a rough estimate. How many people are in this room right now? 60,000. No, around 60 people in this room on a week's notice we got for this awesome talk. And we've got them submitting questions to a Google form that we want you to answer. And we're gonna keep this going back and forth. It'll be quick. It's gonna be awesome. But would you like to say anything to us before we I start just hammering you with questions?
Nope.
All right. Awesome then. All right. So let's just get this started then. Our first what? Oh my God. I did. No, I did. Come on. You're telling me they're yelling at me. All right. So our first question comes from Will Dunkerley, and the question is: because many, like myself, have a soft spot for Valve, does that make the entire company safe from harsh criticism, at least when compared to companies like EA or Ubisoft, concerning the Steam platform and games with huge communities like Dota and CS? So that was a long question. We have Will in the audience. If you have any questions about that question, feel free to ask, and I'll ask him.
Geez, does it make it people easier on us? I would actually argue it the other way. That folks can actually be a little bit rougher on us because we try to have that conversation with folks where we want that feedback, number one. And hopefully number two, because we have a longer relationship with them, so their expectation is hopefully higher. They've enjoyed more than one product or game or whatever from us. And after you collect those moments with folks, hopefully if they're positive, naturally a new expectation is going to come out of, if this is a regular thing that I can count on, it always needs to be at that level. Right. And if it's really going to sustain, over time to keep me coming back, right?
You cut out for
it has to have that.
All right, we're getting less than stellar connectivity. Connectivity's being silly, but you're good now, I think. We're getting Skype's yelling at us. Internet connection is very slow. Damn it, Stevens. We're all right. So all right. It's back to 2 bars. We're gonna cross our fingers and hope this stays working. All right. Yeah. No, we're still good. Can you hear us? Uh-oh. Yeah. If people could get off the Wi-Fi in this room, that would probably help. So, are we good? Or I'll let me go on the text. Are we? Yeah. Yeah. We're actually hammering this room right now. He's typing at us. Naturally, tech difficulties. You are dropping major frames, standing by. Okay. Wow. So I've tried turning off video. Is that any better, or are we still dropping a lot?
There's an Ethernet cord behind you.
Oh, I don't have an Ethernet cord. Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. We can hear you, by the way. So you don't have to...
Let's go.
Yeah, I think. We're going to try moving over to Ethernet. We realize there's an Ethernet port in this room. Sorry for this. Who knew putting 60 tech nerds in a single room, all with laptops open, all with the Wi-Fi on, would cause strain on a single router? All right, maybe there's 2. I'm sorry.
No, there's 2. There's one over there, one over there.
All right, so can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you. So let's try to do a question to keep this rolling.
Okay.
The first one was good. We did hear the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. All right, so I'm going to drag the... All right, so first, I'll get you to start talking first. All right, so another question. Will, can I skip your second question for now? I'll come back to it. All right. So next up, we've got a question from me, actually. So what VR experience have you tried that's your favorite? Do you have a favorite VR experience, either from the Vive or Oculus?
Jeez. My favorite one, it's hard to say yet. I was just talking to somebody the other day about how there's not that definitive title yet. I think everybody's had a different moment when VR has convinced them you know, that, like, I'll tell my story for a second, especially since we're trying to troubleshoot an issue. So the whole story is I came into gaming professionally in around 1995. I was a journalist at the time, and there was a wave of VR that, you know, was going around. It's sort of one of these things that's come, and people have realized its time hadn't come yet, and it went back out, sort of like the tide. It came in and it went back out. Then a couple years later, it came in and then it went back out. And I can remember back in '95 putting on really uncomfortable headgear that like hurt my head, hurt my eyes, you know, everything, right? And people were like, "Can you see it? Can you see it?" And I was like, "No, I can. This is garbage, right? This is total garbage. It's not happening." And so I was sort of jaded back then, and being around for a while, you know, you've seen that tide come in and out. So when I started hearing that we were working on it, I was pretty, you know, skeptical about our ability to get there. But a lot of people were really interested in it, and they're like, "No, the time has come, blah, blah, blah." And I saw some really early stuff that they did, and it was, you know, it was obviously much better than the stuff I'd seen in the '90s, but it didn't feel to me like it was all there yet. And honestly, about a year and a couple months ago now, we were starting to talking about, you know, the guys basically said, "We're ready to start rolling out the VR stuff. We want to talk publicly about it. We think we're shipping soon, all this stuff." And I said, "You know, I don't know about that. I haven't seen your demo in a while, but last time I saw you guys, it looked very R&D. It looked rough." And they were like, "Come check it out, blah, blah, blah. You know, just get the latest demo and see what you think." And I saw kind of a rough version of many of the titles that were in our GDC demo last year, and some things that didn't make it or that we showed later or whatever. And there was a collection of titles there, the blue tilt brush, and just this intro screen thing that we had that wasn't even a game, but it was your initial thing to get used to the controllers, where you sort of, you know, you clicked the one button and a balloon came up off your, you know, your avatar hand, and then you push the other trigger on that controller and it released the button and it flew away. It was like, okay, I'm doing stuff in VR, you know. It was sort of like, okay, our version of strapping you into the ride. And then the car started moving, right? We clicked you into the next thing. And then, you know, I was in the blue and this big dolphin and this big whale were swimming around me and stuff. And it really felt like I was standing on the bottom of the ocean and I was there. And I can remember, like, you know, it went on for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. And I took it off and they're like, "What do you think?" And I was like, holy cow, 20 years of me doubting that this will ever happen in my lifetime have just gone by, right? So for me, it's, I was sort of like, well, I have to deal with that before I can talk to you about what we're going to do at GDC and how we're going to announce this and everything else. But, you know, so for me, I think right now for everybody, that's sort of the experience that people have had with the VR so far, whether it's ours or, you know, anybody else's, right? I don't know that we've seen that title yet that everybody has said, "Oh, that changed the way I'm going to game," right? Like, there's a lot of promises that we've seen out there and a lot of games in development that could get there, but I think trying to say, like, and that was the moment Mario happened for VR, right? Which is sort of, you know, putting it into a caricature, but I think one that's sort of relatable, you know, is too early yet to say that. And I think that we may actually go through, you know, it could be months, weeks, it could be years before we see that come about, right? One could go back and look at 3D games, and for me, it was GL Quake, was when we were actually playing in 3D with 3D accelerated cards over decent network speeds that people could play, that, you know, first-person 3D games really happen. Other people would rewind years before that to Doom, right? And some people maybe didn't come in until later, and so just sounds like stuff that happened, you know, when we were inventing the wheel and we discovered fire. So it's hard to pinpoint where that will be.
Right. All right. Awesome. Thank you. So next we have a question from Alex Subke. He asks, "How did you end up at Valve, and where were you before Valve?" And you did explain this to us a year ago, but we've got plenty more people in attendance now, so it's definitely worth the story again.
So I came out of school with a journalism degree, and I was going to work for the San Jose Mercury News, and a friend of mine called me up and said, "We have a news job for you at this tech magazine I want you to come interview for." And I was like, I don't know that much about computers or games, but it was in San Francisco, and they offered me $1,000 more a year than the Mercury News offered me to not live in San Francisco, but out in the suburbs. So I took that job, and I basically covered games and technology for a few years and got to learn about it. Then, long story short, I moved up to Seattle and worked for Sierra, and I was in charge of marketing and PR for two titles here were to do with outside publishers or outside developers, which was something different that they had done before. One was Homeworld from Relic, the other was Half-Life from Valve. And shortly after I shipped, I was being recruited away by Microsoft and sort of got intercepted by Gabe to go work at Valve, and have been there since late 1999, working on their marketing stuff.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right, cool. So let's see. Next on the list, we have Kevin Quigley, who asks, "How are you today?" All right.
I am awesome. How are you, Kevin?
Very good. He says very good. All right, so I'm going to try to turn the video back on. We're going to cross our fingers it doesn't break everything. All right, let's see. All right, we're back. Hopefully we don't start dropping a ton of frames. You can see Kevin in the front row. Kevin, wave. It's off again. All right, that didn't work. I'm sorry. I promise they're all still there watching. All right, let's get to the next on the list. We've got another question. Let's give Kevin. He asked too many questions. All right, so Jeff McGear asks, "What do you think the Vulkan graphics API will be? Do you think it will be widely adopted, and by extension, will Linux gaming gain some traction?"
Oh yeah, I think it's already being very widely adopted, and I think Linux gaming is already gaining a lot of traction. If you go back and look at the number of titles available on Steam alone over the last 3 years, I think it's more than doubled year over year in terms of the releases there. And I think that also tracks pretty evenly on the other side, that it's showing up on the sales side in equals proportion. And the Vulkan piece is a huge piece that's going to help move that ball forward. And it's just part of a number of efforts that Valve's working on to try and help bolster that along. Obviously, it's a big piece of the Steam machines and the Steam hardware devices. And so, that's something that we see as just being a great another way to help extend the platform and for developers to have other solutions available to them. It's also very interesting once you go into that world how portable the applications are, and being multi-platform and sort of platform agnostic is a term that we use quite a bit. And this just moves towards that. And it's one more step in that direction, and that's just good for developers overall.
Awesome. So on the topic of hardware, we have a question from Matt Lagerin. Asks, "Does Valve have any plans for new hardware devices other than what has been announced so far, being Steam machines, HTC Vive?" Sorry, we're goading for announcements here. I understand if you can't.
Wow. Well, we've been around since 1996, and we hadn't shipped a hardware product until last summer or last fall, I guess. And we're just trying to get through these launches. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, we will definitely keep iterating on everything that we're building. That's something that I think people have seen even, since the launch of the controller, specifically, and the Link as well, and Steam machines as well, to perhaps a lesser extent. We see these devices the same way we look at our software, which is when we launch them to consumers or we get them into the masses' hands, that's when the really interesting stuff can happen, right? That's when the really interesting development can happen, because we're getting feedback from a much larger group of people who are doing, a crazier amount of things than just what our testers are doing when we're asking them to look for specific things or to run specific tests, right? Once you get things out in the wild, you see more types of behavior, and that's when we're able to start writing, and understanding how people are going to use these devices. And, so we're seeing updates through firmware and through, updates for developers as well, and the APIs and the tools that are going out that are going to allow people to make those experiences that much better. And if that means we also have to make changes to the molding or to the strap here of the button on this thing as well down the road, then we'll update the actual physical hardware as well. But I think one of the things that we're trying to do that's unique is, not only just ship the plastic and forget it, but to ship the plastic, look at the way people are behaving with the plastic, and then, changing the software and the way that we're able to touch that through Steam to update those to make them behave either, one way or another to adapt to the way people are using them and to the way developers want to exploit those as well.
All right, awesome. So our next question comes from Luke Smith, and I think it's an interesting one. It's how did ditching daily and flash deals affect the success of the winter sale? Oh God.
Those sales are just one of those things that sort of have taken on a life of their own. We try new things with them, and they seem to work. And always trying new things seem to be a good path to go down. We've definitely heard that some people miss those things, and they may make a comeback at another time or whatever. But the key to those sales and their success is that there's always new stuff to try out, and that we're doing it. And, as anyone from us putting on sales on HTML to performers on a stage or whatever, you got to be willing to take those changes and take those risks, to keep things moving forward. And sometimes, they'll be wildly successful and people won't miss what you took out to put those new things in. And sometimes the new things will be successful, but there'll be people that miss some of the things that got taken out. And, there's a million other variables that can happen as you start playing with those pieces. But the thing is to always be changing those pieces and be listening to what people are saying, to try and make it interesting for them, and sort of have it be an experience for them as they go along.
Awesome, right. So next, our question comes from Jeremy Dahl. He asks, Valve is already directly involved with the competitive scenes of Dota 2 and CSGO. If the upcoming TF2 matchmaking update proves to be a success, could we see similar involvement with TF2 from Valve?
It's really up to the community, on that stuff. TF2 has taken on so many life forms, since it was launched in October of 2007, I believe it was, as part of the Orange Box. So, it's going to be, 10 years next year, 10 years old next year, and it may, launch as the newest esport, it's possible, right? So who knows what the community wants to do with it and where they want to take that. For a while when we started doing the grand experiment with, making it free to play and putting in-game items in there, we had all these grand designs and ideas of things that we could put into the game that would be super cool. And the things that sold the best were, hats, right? So we spent a year or two making every type of hat there ever could be. And the community could make their own hats and sell those, and that helped push the development of the Steam Workshop.
Right.
So, thanks to hats, right? So we don't.
The audience is laughing, and now they're clapping.
I mean, one of the beauties of all this is that we kind of never know where that road goes. Which sort of goes back to my last point, which is you just kind of want to keep throwing stuff out there for people with an educated guess based on how they've responded to other stuff. And then go with the things that are working, just play every song you ever heard, use the musical analogies, play every song you ever learned how to play,
right?
Play more of the ones that people respond to, right?
Mm-hmm. So jumping on the TF2 train, the next question comes from Christian, who asks, are you concerned about Blizzard's Overwatch drawing attention away from Team Fortress 2?
We never look at what other people are doing. It's a really dangerous place to get into as a developer. It's way more important to listen to people who play your games, whether it's your friends who come in to look at your demos and your prototypes, or it's 100,000 people who are playing your game right now on Steam, right? Anywhere in between that, that's your customer. That's the person who's going to play your game. What Blizzard's doing over here is totally noise between this conversation I'm having with my customer. So, we always try to take that really, really seriously. And I can remember, meeting Gabe and talking to him about Half-Life 1 coming out and saying, well, Quake 2's coming out, Sin's coming out, Daikatana's coming out, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And he said, I'm not making those games, we're making Half-Life, right? And I got it then and sort of took it on as a religious, sort of thing, and something that, you can make intrinsic to everything you do as part of your path. It's just what you're making is what you can control, right? And if you make that great and you complete it and you interact with your customer to make it even better after you ship it, then you'll win. And Blizzard may win too, and that's awesome because there's hundreds of millions of gamers around the world, and there's no reason to try to fight over who gets how many of them. There's plenty to go around if you're doing something good.
Awesome. So let's see. I'm trying to keep these sort of organized by like category. I don't want to jump you from VR to TF2 to Valve overall to VR again. So let's see. I'm not seeing anything else about TF2. Oh, yeah. All right, he can roll with it. Good. So then I'll throw a random one at you. Our next question comes from Austin, who asks, "How do you feel about Amazon's Lumberyard?"
Mm-hmm. Again, we're really big fans of developers having lots of choices. I haven't looked at it too much. It's only recently been announced, and I haven't, taken the time to dive through all their papers and posts and whatnot on it. And I know generally what it is, and it's another option.
And we're back. All right, we're back. All right, we're good. Internet, work with us.
I was saying in general, the Lumberyard is another thing for developers to try and experiment with, and
right.
You never know where the next cool platform is going to come from. That's going to take the industry in general to a new place. In terms of input or sound design or visual fidelity or whatever it may be. So hopefully it's additive to the overall ecosystem, and we wish them the best. Again, back to the last point, there's so many gamers in the world, we don't really spend our time too much obsessing over what others are doing and being hyper competitive in it as much as hyper obsessing over what our customers are thinking about what we're doing and how we should react to that.
Right. Awesome. So next we have two questions from Jeff. I think they're both good. So the first one is, at this point, as Valve is extremely profitable, do you still take advantage of the freedom that your company gets being private, or that being private provides? And the second question he asks is, what are some of the challenges you deal with managing a company as unique as Valve? So I guess how does Valve being private affect its freedom, and what are some challenges managing it?
Well, I get to punt completely on the second one because I don't manage anybody.
Well, there you go.
So I help manage products and get them out the door, but I don't manage people directly. So I'll punt on that part. The other part of it is a huge, component, and it's one of those things that we've fought very hard to hang on to throughout the years, and I think for us has been, a blessing, if you will, right? I mean, there's no doubt that if you're a small group of folks that have very, very high standards and are trying to move in a certain direction at a very, very fast speed, having the agility of being a private company that's well funded and resourced, is to your advantage. It's like if you're the type of driver that wants to move quickly and wants precision handling and stuff like that, and you don't care how much you're going to spend on gas, there's a certain type of car you should be shopping for, right? And that car is for you. And so that business model has worked for us because that's the type of folks that tend to, accumulate at Valve. For other companies, it may be completely different, right? And I don't think there is a one size fits all. The best thing to think about it is, think about how your company's ownership and management and all of that is going to work based on what type of products you're going to make, for one, but also what types of people, basically are going to be the principles of that company, and what's going to help all of that, happen over time to where everybody wants to get to, right? And to have sort of a shared idea of which mountain are we climbing here, right? That's a key thing, right? Is for everybody just to say, in general, which way are we going and what do we want what do we want that vista to look like when we get there? Everything else you'll have to make up along the way, and it'll change. But sort of just knowing generally east, west, and it's snowy on the other side of that, or it's sunny on the other side of that. I'm speaking in metaphors, but I think you get the idea.
Right.
And those are the things that are going to work best. And for us, all along, it has been, we're quick moving. We own everything that we have, so we can make all the creative and all the business decisions. And we're going to staff ourselves that way, which is key.
Right.
And I think I talked about that last time as well, which is one of the things that's unique about Valve is that folks like myself were hired to work there by Gabe, right? Gabe's one of those guys that he's really, really smart. And one of the things really, really smart people do is they decide some of the things I just mentioned, and then they say, okay, I'll switch to a sports metaphor now. Which players do I need on the team to actually make that happen, right? A lot of developers say, I want to stay independent. I want to have all that creative control and whatnot. And they say, oh, all that marketing and that business stuff, that's not really hard. I can do that myself. And I'll still make levels on the side, or I'll still program on the side, right? And it's like, you're crazy. That's just, a recipe for failure that's been proven out by a million folks. And one of the wacky things Gabe did was he hired myself and my boss from Sierra to help, launch Valve into the next level after Half-Life's success. Always reinvesting in the company and understanding that personnel is one of the best investments, if not the best investment you can make in this industry.
Awesome. That's all right. So let's see. We've got a few questions. So on the Valve owning everything, there are a few good questions here. One is from Nick. He asks, repeatedly Valve has put in place community guidelines for workshop items for games that place rules on things like altering silhouettes and color schemes. However, in both TF2 and Dota, while these rules were initially followed, Valve let in increasingly wacky and disruptive items that break the art style, and according to some, cause visual disruption. Is this intentional? Profit? What are your comments on this trend in general?
I mean, nothing major beyond, what I said before, which is to always sort of feel okay about trying new stuff out and,
Right.
Letting it hang out for a while and then listening to how people react to it. I think we do a pretty good job of both.
Yeah.
Occasionally, we'll make it better occasionally. And when we break it, we, tend to go back and fix it or roll it back. And when we make it better, we tend to push more in that direction and give people more of that. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I hope we're graded on, is not whether or not, we rolled out an experiment that sucked. It's what we did with it after everybody said it sucked, right?
Right. So the next question is so, I don't know how to word this. I don't want to say aggressive, but it's quite the, so the person omitted their name. And I promise it's not offensive to a person or anything. It's just sort of aggressive at Valve. Let's see what you think. So Valve has said they want to push the industry forward and see what people do with what you give them. However, there is no support for community drivers for the Steam controller and tying its functionality to Steam client DLLs. Is Valve backing down from that mentality, or is there more community support in the works to make the hardware more open?
Yeah, I mean, the Steam controller was a really ambitious undertaking, and especially for a company of 350 people's first hardware product.
Right.
And so on a lot of that stuff, I think the short answer is just give us time on that and keep clamoring for it, and we'll get to it. There's the old adage, right, with technology in general, and certainly with games, is it can happen on time, it can happen with all the features, or it can happen on budget, right? But chances are you can't do all three. And with us, we almost never hit on time. Sometimes we come in on budget, but we almost always come in with all the features. So, we aim for that always. And on this one, it's going to take some time for us to catch up on everything with this because, again, it's a very, very ambitious design, and it's built for the long haul. And it's trying to do something in bridging the gap, not only for the point and click PC mouse and keyboard style games into the living room, but also sort of trying to help people understand what else they can do with this thing that's gone out there as well. And that means bringing in the community and providing the type of support that you mentioned there. And we get that.
All right, so I'm gonna switch topics for a minute. I'm seeing like 4 or 5 questions in the same sort of area, so I'll sort of combine them together. The basic question is: so we're a tech school. A lot of people are interested in games. A lot of people are interested in either interning or trying to get a job at Valve. And so let's see. One question is: the internet has mixed answers on whether they hire interns. Is there a way to become interns? There's another question for if they're interested in working for Valve in the future. What do you think the best way to prepare their resume is? Please hire me, Valve. So just general comments on that so we can lay those questions to rest.
The best thing I can tell you guys is in general to get into the industry is start doing whatever it is you think you can do, right? For me, it was, I got pulled into it because of my writing skills and my ability to sort of be, a news guy, right? Which is reporting on stuff, interviewing people, talking to people, and then writing it up and putting it out in a way that lots of people can digest it in a short amount of time. Marketing ultimately isn't much different than that, and making that transition for me was pretty easy, and naturally PR goes with that. So that was sort of my angle into it. And since then, because I've been around games and the production of games so long, I now have this product management sort of, level of skills and business stuff that sort of was built up around that. And I collected that as I went through. That's just a long way of saying, like, you make it all up once you get in your foot in the door, you work really hard, and then eventually you end up in a good place, right? That's what the industry is all about. So, if you're an engineer, start coding something, get on a mod or an indie game and get that onto Steam, ship something. That's a big thing we always say, if you're an artist, get something into, workshop or any place where you can point and say, I shipped this and this many people played it and here's the feedback I got or what have you. Valve wants to hear, they think it's great that you're going to a great university and that will help move you along the way towards. But ultimately, they're going to want to see what you've shipped. Right. And most of the good gaming studios in the industry are going to have that same thing. And it's hard to get to when you're thinking too large. I did this whole talk at SMU last summer that I think is somewhere on the internet about sort of figuring out how to scope what shipping means and to get yourself to that place. And very quickly, it's like, it can be as simple as putting out a hat in workshop for TF2. Right? It could be as complex as shipping a full indie game through, through Greenlight or through Early Access or what have you on Steam. It could be getting a deal signed with Activision or whatever. I mean, that's the big crazy one. But that's sort of the other end of your career. It's not now, right? Shipping the hat for TF2 in Workshop is much more akin to now. And sort of be willing to sort of run up those stairs. You're going to run up them. If you want to get into it, you have the skills and whatnot. But you do it is worthwhile to touch each one of the stairs on your way up to that point where you're shipping the big game and EA is your retail distributor or whatever. And you're similar to an Epic or a Valve or a Blizzard or whoever it is that, you put up on that pedestal of those stairs. And that's how you'll get to Valve or how you'll found the next Valve. And that's just as likely as, getting to Valve is, and that's just as honorable and could be even more profitable for you. So leave those options open for yourself, get in the industry, work really hard, and then let yourself, follow your nose, so to speak, to where the best path is going to be for you. And always look to be shipping. As long as you're shipping, sort of, you're winning. Right? You can always point to that. It's an entertainment industry adage that gets pulled over across technology and is actually, super, super effective, right? I shipped Half-Life, all of a sudden Microsoft wanted me, and then Gabe wanted to steal me back, right? And, as soon as I shipped Half-Life 2 many years later, once again, the recruiters were sort of banging on the door, right? You're only as big as your last release. And that comes all the way down to the beginning of your career and trying to get a job as an animator or as an artist or as a coder on a project at a shop.
Right. So hello. Are we good?
No worries. A little feedback, but
Yeah.
nothing worse than the dive clubs I used to play in the 80s.
We're having problems because our own speaker can't hear me anymore. Just one moment. I don't know, man. They've not been on this entire time. I'm going to give this 30 seconds, and as long as he can hear me, everything's fine. Yeah. All right. We're going to move on. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Doug, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And they can hear you, so there's no problem. Fantastic. All right. So next question. Let's see. Actually, so 2 last comments on that last part. 1. So that is a no for interns. Just checking for everyone. And 2, what I think Doug is trying to say, if you want to get into the game dev industry, you should come on down to the Stevens Game Development Club and start making games. Shameless self-plug. All right, moving on. Next question. Let's see. So let's move into VR because a ton of people are asking questions on this. So the first question I see is from Chris, who asks, what do you think makes VR more than just a short-term gimmick like the Kinect and a lot of motion controls? And what do you see for its future?
Oh, well, I mean, the cheesy answer is, you can look at a million sci-fi examples from the 50s through the 60s and 70s and probably through the 80s that reference it, right? This is the holy grail of computer interaction, right? The holodeck. This is it. This isn't just an input device. It's not the old plastic gun that shipped with Duck Hunt back in 1979 or whatever it was that was an add-on to the old Atari 800 or whatever. Or anything that's akin to that gun from Duck Hunt. This is, this is a different thing. And it's going to take a while, I think, for folks, like I was saying earlier, I don't know that it's an overnight, revolution, to borrow Bernie Sanders' word. I think everybody understands the potential of it because it's been referenced going way back to Star Trek and beyond. And the people that have seen and had the chance to, experiment with it a little bit can see what, just the small, amount of time on these very early prototype works, are doing and how quickly developers are going from just, barely functional types of things to highly interactive works. It's rapidly moving along and people are starting to understand this new level of it. And I mean, you can see that all the way up. I mean, to talk about the other guys, for example, I mean, Michael Booth, who worked on Left 4 Dead with us at Valve from Turtle Rock, was just hired recently by by Facebook rather, to work with Mark Zuckerberg and those guys on figuring out what social VR looks like. They've been talking about that a lot this week and announced his team, the social VR team. Mike's one of the guys leading that up. And, that just doesn't happen when sort of the new Bill Gates of the world, is pushing this so big that he bought Oculus and now he's hiring people like Mike to found new divisions to push into this world, and we see it as a way to, extend, gaming interaction and do storytelling and all the things that we love as well. And the more I talk to people out there, whether they're filmmakers, whether they're, psychologists who want to study behavior and use it as a way to do rehab for patients, and on and on and on and on. VR has just as much potential to move us forward, I think, as the advent of the PC. I can remember back in the days when I went to college for a while, and then I dropped out to play music, and then I went back to college, and it was the smartest thing I ever did. It was the smartest thing I ever did because what happened while I was out was computers were ushered into the universities. When I was there the first time, we had to write papers on typewriters and use liquid paper and all that stuff to fix and correct our mistakes. When I came back 5 years later, there was a computer lab and word processors and screens, right? And the whole world had changed. The idea of writing a paper for college had suddenly gotten tremendously easier. And, we got into the idea of actually the content rather than the abstraction of trying to get these stupid words typed onto this page without a mistake so that the professor wouldn't flunk me because I didn't know how to freaking type, right? And so, we moved past that. We evolved as human beings. And I think VR has the potential to sort of move things forward that way again. And again, it's referenced so much in cinema and in science fiction and whatnot as a way to sort of communicate and whatnot. In a way, it is the teleporter, right? You're not necessarily able to teleport to Italy or to beam up to planet whatever, but you are able to put on, sort of the Tommy wear with, the headphones and the eye patch, and you're there. You're teleporting from your living room or wherever it is you are fully to that place, and it's powerful. So I know that sounds like a speech or whatever, but when you have a chance to try it, and you've seen a couple of the apps that are coming out very, very soon, 15, 20 years from now, you'll probably be telling your students or your kids or whatever about life before VR and life after it, and how you were there. And when we were kids, sort of like myself, when I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones, right? And so you'll sort of be saying that to your kids, like, when I was a kid, we didn't have VR, so you got that to look forward to.
On that note of VR sort of changing like the entire landscape, Robin asks, so do you think we'll be seeing a new set of standards for regular PCs and laptops, not just gaming PCs, as VR becomes more popular? And would marketing play a role in that or not?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the first part?
All right, so the question is, do you think we'll see a new set of standards for regular PCs and laptops, not just gaming PCs, as VR becomes more popular? Like, will your average computer need to be able to run VR in the future? Because
we just put out the test, so I don't know. I'd be interested if I could see the class right now. I'd ask everybody to raise their hands for how many people have taken the test, and then I'd ask everybody who's got their hands up to keep their hands up if they need a new computer.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys just.
So I'll do that for you. Hold on. So how many people in here have done the Valve released earlier this week? It was like the VR test.
Yeah, Steam VR test.
So we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4. We tried it in our club. Our computer passed with flying colors. I'm really happy. So
okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. We're getting like a good 15 people or so. And
have taken it?
Passed. 3 hands stayed up. 3.
So 3 passed.
3 passed.
Okay, there you go. I can't argue with it. I mean, that's just that's data. There's nothing to read into that. That test is set there to tell you whether or not you're thumbs up or thumbs down. I assume everyone in the room there is honest and ran the right test. So, to get there, and that's one of the reasons why I think time is going to play into this, right? It's going to take developers time to understand what to do with all this power that we're creating, through this new level of input, display, and sensory communication, right? It's going to take a while for consumers to get, their rigs up to speed on it and whatnot. But, my adage on this, and there was a great article I think Forbes did over the weekend, one of the Forbes gaming blogger guys or whatever whatever their section is called. I don't mean to diminish them. I just don't know what the name of their section is. But they wrote this great article talking about, this is the beginning of something new and big. And something new and big in technology always kind of takes a while to come through and has a very different price point and what have you when it comes through. And the computer part, I would argue, as much as the headset itself, is one of those cost pieces that customers are going to have to grapple with as to when it's time for them to take the plunge into VR. And that's why ourselves and others are working with the PC manufacturers to put bundles together and to make it more palatable in the short term, right? But having said all that, one of these things where I get to act like the old grandpa and say, we didn't have cell phones when I was a kid. When I was a kid, they introduced this thing called the Walkman, which allowed you to listen to music on a battery-operated device in stereo, running your own tape, which at the time was revolutionary because before that we had records, which just weren't even possible for it, right? The very first Walkman ever released was issued, I believe, in 1981 or 1982 for $199, and people actually bought it. And it took the thing like 8 to 12 months before it started to chisel down, and then it became commonplace, I believe, around $40 or $50 they were sold at, plus the batteries and the tape and all that kind of stuff. But it was a 4x price difference from launch to what became commonplace very quickly. And so we all know the cost of computers, and the GPUs that are coming out today in our top price, 18 months from now, are going to cost, 40 to 60% what they cost today. Similarly, we could look at VR and track that over a period of time and say, okay, and then all of a sudden you can find this intersection of time that'll be like a lightning bolt, whether it's 8 months, 18 months, 28 months, I don't know where it's going to be, but all of a sudden it's going to become very profitable. A series of apps are going to come out that are going to look like a Mario or a Counter-Strike or anything that you want to throw out there, a Doom, that was a game changer in a platform. And that's going to be the moment that you tell your grandchildren about, where there was life before VR and after VR. It's not going to be in a couple weeks. It's not going to be the moment. It's going to be sometime after that, and that's going to be some of the parameters that are going to be at work there, is how that price over time moves from the highly educated affluent to everybody, and how do those app manufacturers get there. But it's a win, not an if. There's no question.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So let's see. We're gonna jump off VR. I know I'm getting more VR questions, but I'm gonna change subject. We'd be here all night talking about VR. So let's see. What else do we have? We have. I just had one. I swear. All right. So the next question's from Matt, who asks, "How far into the future does Valve plan their projects?"
From right before they start them until several months or years after they finish them, and then even then, they're still being planned. I mean, they're living organisms, right? People come up with ideas. Prototypes will be built to test it on a small, achievable scale. If people start responding to it in a positive way, or people want to work on it, then it grabs momentum and off it goes. It can go for a little while and be killed later. It can go through 1 or 2 rounds of prototypes and die right there. But everything is really super, super organic. There's no master plan that says in 5 years we have to have an RPG, and in 6 years we need to have a new FPS. And it's totally not the way Valve works at all. It's much more about, hey, some smart people down the hall have some stuff they've been working on, and they want to, show it to a bunch of people and see if other people want to work on it, and let's test it out and see where it goes. And it has a much more low-key, organic sort of style than sort of the, this arbitrary sort of bucket-filling mentality that maybe sort of manifested when you feel like you have to have a portfolio lineup or something like that. And that's part of something that gets achieved because we are privately held, right? We aren't a publicly traded company, so we don't have to have a new release every Christmas if we don't want to, without cutting off our market valuation, right? It just exists whether or not other things are working or have worked, and we've saved our money. And it's a little bit more old-fashioned that way in terms of how you can plan your accounting, and it opens up those freedoms.
All right, awesome. Our next question comes from, where is it? Robin, again, who asks, wait, where did that one go? Sorry. So we've seen Valve move into game distribution and gaming systems development lately. Does this mean we won't be seeing as many game titles developed from Valve going forward? And that's...
Gosh, I hope it means we're going to see a bunch of new games that work for all these systems, but nothing to announce today.
That's totally fine. So let's see. Next we got Alexander Post, who says, "Hi, Doug. What's the coolest thing you're working on right now? What's the big thing that the marketing department is promoting? And what marketing campaign are you most proud of?" I understand if you can't answer the first question.
Oh, no, the first question is the VR stuff. I mean, you can probably tell from, how much I'm talking about it on those questions. I mean, it's what I'm doing right now. And usually that's sort of the most exciting thing, and the thing that you're talking about the most. And if it's not, then, it may be time to look for a different gig. The campaign I'm most proud of all time, gosh, it's hard to say. I mean, the first one, Half-Life 1 was a big deal, and it was the first time we broke through. So, that may be it. I mean, each one is special. Each one has a different thing to it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've stayed at Valve so long. And, not only is it part of our product cycle and how we approach development, especially post-launch development, of trying new things out, but it's also part of how we market our titles and stuff. So going back to Half-Life 1, it was all about print, right? We were making magazine ads, and whether or not they were 2 pages or they were fold-outs or double fold-outs, and inside cover or back cover or all that kind of stuff was a big deal, and which magazines and stuff. Then by the time we got to Orange Box and Left 4 Dead, we were on TV and we had done the internet, and we were learning more things about the internet, so doing the internet in different ways. And then by the time you get to Portal 2, you had the ARG, and then with Dota 2, we just sort of skipped the traditional marketing channel and we went straight to the international. And that was the brainchild of one of the project leads who came into my office one day and said, what if we showed the game at trade shows by doing a tournament instead of just showing it at kiosks? And then we started having a conversation, more people got into it, and we just finally said, what if instead of spending millions of dollars on television, we gave that money to players, we had this big tournament, blah, 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 et cetera, and that's what became the international. So, I mean, and that was a conversation, again, that came from the developers and sort of was, bounced over to marketing and bounced back and then thrown around the horn, again, using the baseball metaphor here, that, germinated into something cool and something very, very different. So answering the other question, I don't mean to be evasive, but each one's been so different. I guess if you ask me which one's the favorite, I would say Half-Life 1 just because it was the first. But each one has been sort of special, and knock wood, each one that we've taken all the way to the end has been super, super successful. And so, it's a lot of fun when you're winning, right? And being at Valve, one of the things that's great about it is the products generally tend to win, and you get to be part of a campaign that was great because at the end of the day, the product was great. It's easier to sell BMWs than it is to sell crappy used cars, right?
So our next question comes from Kevin, who asks, does Valve have any plans to break into the mobile scene?
No.
Wonderful. Concise. Any common reason? Nah, just not in that area.
There's been some attempts by some folks to move, some platform function applets, I would call them, not even full apps, but applets. And I think from time to time there may have been a couple, projects started up to look at doing gameplay on it, whether it was ours through a third party that we were contracting or some people doing something internally, and it's just never kind of taken off. There's a set of people there that are working on creative stuff, and it just tends to be, what screen you bring things to or what platform you bring things to is part of, what you are as a performer or what you are as an artist or as a creative. And for us, things that are highly networked, that have, deeper graphics, a lot of sound intensity, those have been the experiences that have come out of our creative people's heads and minds and fingers and all that kind of stuff. So, that's where they've lived, and that is sort of our thing to be what works for us, right? And so, there's nothing, and again, we don't have this big top-down thing that says we must have a mobile strategy or else our stock price will go down next year when everybody's talking about mobile. So it just hasn't happened. There's no specific reason why. And it's not like we haven't made some attempts of, let's bring an old game from the catalog onto a mobile device and see what that looks like and do that experiment or whatever. And it's, just hasn't fired anybody up.
All right, so
yet we all have mobile devices and use them all the time. So it's not to say that we look that way on them. We're just not the people to create them.
So I got the 5 minutes left signal from your brother. That does it for most of the big questions. We're going to jump into a few smaller, quick, easy, fun questions. So the next question I actually have too. The latest one submitted is so you guys released a game, I don't know, the early 2000s called Ricochet. They're asking about the potential to do a sequel. I'd like to know what Ricochet is because I bought the Valve Complete Pack and it was there, and I've never heard anything about it. So what is Ricochet? Is there a sequel in the works?
You got to fire it up. I don't know if Gabe will ever watch this, but I know that's his favorite game, and he's dying for us to greenlight Ricochet.
All right. That's awesome. All right, so next we got let's see. What's your favorite snack at the Valve snack bar?
Oh boy. On the healthy side, they got me started on those like smoothie in a bottle things. So I sort of snack on those when I'm like low blood sugar now, which is better than garbage. The garbage I tend to eat there is always the super saltiest stuff. So like if there's a payday or like a Snickers or anything in that family, I'll pull from that family. Nothing, no one thing though is it though.
All right, so we already did the how are you today. Let's see, what else do we have? So someone in response to you mentioning Bernie Sanders asks, who do you prefer for the 2016 presidential election? You don't have to answer. All right, your brother's kicking me down. Let's see.
That's my setup for my best joke. You know, usually the joke in politics is I'm voting for this person and I don't like that person. And people say, if that person gets elected, I'm
moving to Canada.
Gets elected, I think I'm moving to Canada.
Right.
So
your brother asks the question, how much do you like the Boston Red Sox?
I'm trying to think. I'm sure I'm looking up. It's too high up, but I got my Yankees lunchbox, my Yankees batters helmet.
Yeah!
Woo! So, and I'm wearing blue and white stripes, so I could turn them the other way. But
all right. So what I'm going to do right here
no, not at all.
For the last 3 minutes, any quick last questions, people raise your hands and just go. I saw Nick's hand first. What? Who is Icefrog? I don't even know what that question means.
Who is Icefrog? Who is I? I don't know. They don't tell me things. I'm just in marketing.
Go ahead, just say. Great. What is the craziest game pitch you've ever heard?
Craziest game pitch I ever heard was actually when I was still at Sierra. I would look at the new game submissions that they would get from people, and this is going way back now. Like, you know, 3D gaming is just coming into vogue. It's like 1997, 1998. And it was this game where you basically turn into a killer bee and fly around and play as the bee. So it was hot.
All right, here.
And it had some great game name that was part of that era. That was like, you know, Killer Bee 3D or something, because everything had to have 3D at the end of it to tell you it's 3D.
Hey, Dougie, can you do 10 more minutes for us? Oh, that figures. Doug, can
You're breaking up.
10 more minutes for us?
I think you're saying, do I have a few more minutes? I do, yeah, but you are literally breaking up.
Okay.
Right. How about now?
The sound is better. Give me 1 minute to go grab some more water. I'm out of water. If I gotta talk somewhere, I need some more water.
We'll collect questions. So we got like 5-10 more minutes. What's your question? Favorite hat? Favorite TF2 hat. Okay, what else? Your other what? It was already answered. It was about competition. They promote competition. That's gonna be your answer. Have you ever been as far decided to do Think More Like was one of them. I'm not asking that.
I'll call on them. I'll get their question and relay it. You should be able to hear it this way. You won't get the feedback.
Right.
So when I point to you, just tell me your name and your hometown, because he loves that. Okay? Yeah, no, he's been kicking at it, as you know, about certain things. So we'll start with you as soon as he comes back. I'm not sure if they will.
Yeah, no, so I'll repeat the questions when he tells me.
He'll probably hear me good. Jeff. How many of you think he's going to have a hard time doing it?
I'll point the mic like
Very
this.
good.
Change the room setting.
There you go. Now, are you talking to that?
Yeah,
And he
I'm
hears you? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now we're talking.
So you're.
All right. Wow! Red Wings, Hoboken Red Wings. Home cooking. All right. Lightning round.
Can you hear your brother? So your brother wants to do a lightning round. Can you hear him talking from where the mic is? Try talking.
Can you hear me, Dougie? It's me, your brother.
Yep.
There you go. Very
go.
good.
It's me!
It's me.
What do I make your money?
I
Stop.
went that Half-Life 3. I've been waiting a long time. What about that Half-Life 3? Hey, I want one of them internships. What about it? I know the student spec. How about it? All right, I'm going to point to this kid here. What's your name?
Matt from Massapequa,
Massapequa, Long Island in the house. And here's his question.
What makes a good video game advertisement?
What makes a good advertisement, Dougie, for a video game?
Something that gives you the real spirit of the game and hooks your interest, and that's it. You know, for me, the best single net ad I think that we did in terms of a pure ad impression was the Left 4 Dead billboards, right? It was just that Left 4 Dead logo with the hand that was cut off on that grizzly sort of color and whatnot, and it was like you had it all right there. It was a horror game, you know. You had the name of it, and you were either in or you were out. So for me, that was one of those things where I felt like we executed from a textbook marketing, you know, standpoint. You know, we executed really well on that one. That one, by all accounts, was just a classic, you know, slam dunk for it. But by the same token, you know, the Portal 2 ARG was wildly successful as well. It's probably not something that could be replicated as easily, though, as the Left 4 Dead billboard, which was sort of from a more, you know, traditional place. And I just use our examples because I hate to critique other people's ads too much. But I think that...
I was going to say, let's do a quick marketing example. How many people saw those billboards on the Jersey Turnpike and all the rest? Yeah, for Portal and all those, really effective. The 3 to 5 thing. 3 to 5 quick images, you know, people get it, they get the snapshot, and you got the brand. Good. Who's got the next one? Here's a young man from Brockton, Massachusetts, one of our top actors from the hometown of Rocky Marciano. We call him the Brockton Blockbuster. You know him as Boston College High School graduate. Josh, why would you like, how are you today, Josh? Long time no see. Everything good? This is great. Here he is. Here's your chance, my man. You're on stage.
What's been your favorite game to play?
Favorite game that you like to play, Dougie, besides baseball and pool?
Softball these days, but that's another story. Geez, as all time for sure was probably Super Mario 64. Currently, it's hard to say. You know, I've been playing a lot of games on back on the Wii right now lately, sort of catching up on Wii games and playing a lot of games as always on the iPhone, but I wouldn't say I'm hooked on anything right now at the moment.
Well, from Dallas, Texas, the Big D, home of Southern Methodist University. He's up here at Stevens Tech, though. Not SMU, because you know good schools, don't you, Wilma? That's it. What can I ask him for your text?
Console or PC?
Console or PC?
You know, if I have to choose one, I'll take the PC because there's more you can do with it. But I especially am sort of a Nintendo guy. So I've always had their platforms going, I think, all the way back. I mean, in college, I used to tape up my thumbs to play NBA Jam until the middle of the night because I was playing it so much on my SNES that I would actually get blisters on my fingers from it, which is like, you know, you're a geek win, right? That's one of those moments. So, yeah.
Good. Hey, Doug, here's a young man from one of your favorite states, the state of Florida. He's in our project management class. Alex, what'd you like to ask him?
Like kind of going with the Nintendo thing, they've always tried to innovate kind of from console to console. Do you think like Valve tries to take after that and is trying to push forward instead of kind of playing into what the easy market is?
You cut out a little bit me on the end, but I think I get the question is that, you know, I think each game that we've done, at least, we've tried to have a new mechanic, a new thing that's going to happen, and not just have it be sort of like shoveling out more of the same. And I think that's something that, you know, Miyamoto for sure and some of the other designers at Nintendo have tried to do, right? Because for a long time, and again, it goes way back, I think the very first question somebody answered was, or asked was, you know, or we talked about was this idea of continuity as a brand or as a developer, this relationship that you're going to have with your customers when you're a content creator. And for a long time, one of the reasons I love, and I'm a brand specific guy, one of the reasons I love Nintendo and Mario especially is one of the games that is sort of I connect with is each time, you know, there was a Mario coming out, there was a new system, there was a new gameplay mechanic, there was a new control input, whatever, or all of those things. And it was a moment in gaming that I could sort of rely on. It wasn't just like a new platform game I was going to play. It was like a new way of playing platform games. And Nintendo and Miyamoto brought that to the table. And that's those things that, you know, once you get people really excited about playing a game, you've taken them to a different place and you've really succeeded. As an artist, you know, if you piss somebody off or you make them happy or you make them cry, or even if you make them laugh, you know, you're moving them in an emotional way, and that's touching them on a level that's way, way deeper than, oh yeah, well I was bored last night so I watched this show or I played this game and it sort of passed as something to do. That's, you know, that has a place, and there is, I guess, a business to be made there if you scope it a certain way. But that's not the way to build a great company or a great studio or have a long-term place in an industry the way that Miyamoto or Nintendo have achieved, and that I hope maybe someday Valve's thought of as well.
Nick from Neptune, New Jersey, down by the Jersey Shore, home of Jack Nicholson.
Valve has done some crazy stuff with their ARGs. How much of that do they come up with beforehand? How much of that do they come up with in reaction to what players are doing as they're trying to figure it out? And like, what's it like trying to create an ARG?
Well, you know, the folks that did the Portal 2 ARG, you know, it was one of those things that happened kind of spontaneously and instantaneously, and was done almost completely by the dev team. In fact, I think it was all done by the dev team, and it was, you know, one of those things where, again, you allow the product to sort of dictate where the marketing should go, you know, and that is probably one of the purest moments when that occurred that I can think of, certainly in our history. And it was amazing to me how quickly folks got there, you know, all the way through to the last piece, which was making calls to the you know, to the modem that actually required somebody go find, you know, old equipment to get to it and stuff like that. How many pieces there for that to fall apart? But yet it did, and it was, I forget what the time on was, but it was a very, very short amount of time from both when it was created to when it was launched, and then from when it was launched to when it was solved and we were sort of outed, if you will. And none of it seems realistic in retrospect to say they came up with all of it and put it together in less than a few days, and it was all solved in a matter of hours. When you look at the details of what's involved in it, it looks like something that was elaborately planned over a lot of time. It could have taken people a week or two to unlock. And it's like, no, actually, it all came together in almost as short a time as it was cracked. And it was this fun sort of came very naturally from a group of you know, engineers and designers from the team, you know, talking about a way to announce the product.
Good. Hey, Dougie, I know you spend a lot of time, you've been real gracious with your time, looking at some of the programs and stuff that the project management students have been doing. I know you looked at a great project last year for Manpower Rivera, who came all the way from Venezuela via Bergen County College and now here at Stevens. And she had a question for you right now, and I got news for you. With all the kids in the family, you got a new niece. So here she is. Very good. It's a family. It's a family.
Hola, tío. ¿No?
Yeah, he got it. Yep. There you go.
Hola, tío Dog.
Nice and loud.
Tío.
Closer to the mic.
There you go.
This
Just go up to the
one?
mic. There you
This
go.
side?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hola, tío. I don't think it's
Hola.
He's got it.
Oh,
He
okay.
got you.
Okay, tío. Una pregunta. So it's my understanding that if you have an idea in your company, you can pretty much find the people that want to work with you to develop that idea. So how do you decide which ideas take priority? And in that process, how do you handle creative differences since it's pretty much a buzz-free environment since 1996?
Mm-hmm.
1996.
You know, it's one of those things that, again, what's that? We're good?
Go ahead.
Okay. It's one of those things that sounds like it would be really, really complicated and fraught with a bunch of infighting and, you know, power struggles and whatnot. But the way it actually ends up working is just sort of the best idea wins, and data settles all arguments, so to put that into play, it's like somebody will come up with an idea for something, and like I was saying, a small group of people will get together and prototype something that's playable or viewable or whatever to represent it. And then they're basically off to do internal recruiting. And if they can get people involved in the project who want to work on it, then by default, there's something compelling and interesting about it, or at least that's the way the system is sort of set up to ferret out, the good from the bad ideas, right? So it's really sort of this Darwinist sort of approach to project design, which is, it gets a chance to sort of form on this small level, and then it succeeds or fails based on, whether or not it has merit, and whether or not it's compelling. And the more people that get onto it, the bigger it can happen, and the bigger life it will have. And then in terms of decisions along the way, largely that's all put up to play testing. And as I was saying, data rules. So if there's, a big thing as to whether or not we should implement a co-op mode on this game, or we should do, speed time replays or whatever it is, somebody will implement that into a level, and we'll bring in 15 kids or, friends of the families, at the company, and see what people say about it, and if it's nebulous in their reaction, we'll get another 15 people and keep going until we find an answer to it. But sort of trying to solve these problems in the abstract, or letting one person's opinion of it or another, is going to lead to a really good place. It's not going to lead to the greatest common denominator out of your product. And it's critical that as you're going through these products, to focus on only those pieces, because every moment of gameplay that you create is so expensive to put together and polish and ship, that it's really, really critical to, just focus on the things that matter. To extend on that just a little bit, we brought in some research psychologists and hired them on staff. O-Town Mikey, which my brother has met, Dr. Mike Embender, who's from Orlando, Florida, is one of them, and a good friend of mine. And he's done, a bunch of studies with eye gazing and studying where people are looking while they're playing our games. And we used to spend tons of man hours and dollars behind that, obviously, to make every room of every level of every game just look fantastic. We found out through Mike's studies that a lot of these rooms, people come in, they look at the monster, they shoot, they hit the level, they jump, and they're gone. And there could have been flat gray walls behind them, or there could have been the most beautiful panorama, ever created in a video game, and it makes no difference to that person's gaming experience. And it sort of changes, how much time we invest on, is this a vista? Are we going to do storytelling here? Or is this just a hallway that somebody's running down to try to escape the monster? And there are creative choices that can be made there for performance, art, time, etc., that are fantastic. And it's just another way of sort of solving those same problems in terms of editing yourself, focusing on what really matters, and all of that is dictated on looking at people who play the games as early and as often in production as possible.
Excellent, good. Doug, just two more left. I know, isn't one of your favorite towns in New Jersey Hackettstown, the Big H?
Well, that just might be your favorite town in New Jersey.
That just might be your favorite. And we have a young man from that area right now who's another one of the stars in our CS as well as project management. Christian, take it away. Here's your shot.
Hi, Doug. Portal, Half-Life, and Left 4 Dead have been very innovative games for the industry. And I was wondering if we haven't seen a trilogy for any of those series because there's no more innovations to be had, or is there like an actual reason why there is no Half-Life 3 or Portal 3? Or are you just waiting for a new innovation to come along?
It's just one of those things, really. 3 just happens to be this weird number for us. So I don't know what to tell you. I'd love to work on those projects as well.
Excellent, good. Doug, last but not least, another young man, you looked at his final project last semester. He's also one of the officers here in the club. And he's from, isn't one of your other favorite towns, beautiful Morganville, New Jersey, where the fabulous Flanagan brothers live?
Ah, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so here's the gentleman from Manawan. Put your hands together for it. Yes, you did.
So, West Coast Lombardi. I got to know East Coast Lombardi pretty well, and I figured I'd shoot a question your way based on the work of my final project. I did a pretty good chunk on esports in particular, and especially one of the big things in the industry was, how far should a game company go if there's a need for legal issues and such. There have been issues of some companies stepping in to intervene. What do you think is an appropriate level of overreach or, oversight per se for a game company that has or an actively long-running esport?
Well, we're finding out, aren't we? The past year or two, we've been involved in a couple situations where, we've had to work with the league or with the promoter or both to rectify a number of situations, some publicized and some not. It's a new thing. It's a big thing, and it's going to keep growing. And like any other sport, the integrity of the sport is critical. Whether it's cheating in the game with, bindings or, crooked hacks, in the software itself, or whether it's the way the money is being exchanged on the outside, or just simply the way, the user experience is for viewers at home or viewers in person. And so, we try to work with folks as much as we can, and all this is new ground for us and for others. I think that, so far, most of the situations I think have been able to, see a situation where right has just prevailed, and they've sort of naturally resolved. But it is something that we're constantly keeping an eye on and, understanding as, some of these third-party events are starting to garner, prizes that are much larger than they used to be in the old days. And as more dollars are introduced, the temptation for things to be challenged or compromised go up. So, it's part of the growing pains for esports, but it's a new area that I think is understandable, and with each situation, there may be a different remedy for it. But so far, by and large, again, Darwinism seems to be winning out here, where there haven't been too many examples of people getting hurt too badly by this stuff, thankfully, so far. And more times than not, the right outcome comes of these situations.
So I'm going to hop back on the mic for one last. It was a quick question that got asked, but I didn't get answered. It was just, what do you have a favorite TF2 hat? That was the one question I remember being asked. They didn't get asked.
Oh, geez. No. I don't. I always play as the heavy, I can tell you that. So if you run into somebody on the server that... if you're ever on a server and somebody's posing as me and they're not a heavy, chances are they're full of it. So I can tell you that much.
All right, awesome. So I think that about does it for this awesome Q&A. Thank you so much, Doug.
They are.
Hold on for a second. So I'm going to hand it over to your brother to sort of close it out. I think we're about good for the night, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
How about one more hand for him?
One more. There he is. All right.
Very good. Terrific, Dougie. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. I know it's only like, what, 8 o'clock or something on the, or 7:30 on the East Coast or West Coast?
There you go. There you go. Get ready for prime time here out west. You guys have a good night.
You too. Thank you so much. Good night. All right. I'm gonna turn the lights on. All right. So thank you so much for coming out, everybody. Oh, yeah. So for those of you who want to get more involved in game dev and want to get a job at Valve, SGDC has meetings Tuesdays at 9 in Lead 318. you want to get on the mailing list, let me know. They're great. It's fun. We do things. Oh yeah, last thing. You can't hear it because it's. Can you hear it? Hello. Cool. Last thing. SGDC is doing an event not this Saturday, but next Saturday. It's called Let's Make a Game. So, if any of you have no experience in game dev, but you want some, or you want some exposure to it, come on out. No one's paying attention. I give up. All right, cool. Good night. Eat pizza. Take drinks. I let him go. There was no hope.